Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another one of my shows, William Wallace for America. As I like to say, I am William Wallace. And with me today is Kevin McGary. And we're going to talk about the things that unite us. However, when we're talking about some of the subjects, you might say, well, hey, that doesn't necessarily unite a lot of people. But when he explains it, you're going to see how, in fact, it not only unites us, but brings us together to find solutions to help fight the problems that are plaguing our country and how we can improve it for everyone in our country. Because once we come together on those things that unite us, we find ways to solve the problems. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on with us. I really appreciate it.
Brother William, thank you for having me, man. It's good to be here.
I tell you what, when you're put on my radar, I said, man, this is somebody that I've got to have on my show. You talk about a lot of different topics, but before I start asking you questions, what do you like to talk about the most? What's your favorite thing to start off with?
I'd like to talk about my latest book the most.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
it, baby. Woked Up. That's my latest book, and it's going after the woke movement. It really confirms that the woke movement is rooted in white supremacy and racism. So that's really a passion of mine, and so it's a great topic because everybody who wants to be woke, they're always pointing fingers at everybody else being white supremacist and racist, when really by definition they are. I mean, they can't even escape it. It's not even debatable.
So Kevin, you'll be the first time that I ever say this on one of my live shows, and I haven't introduced it yet, but I'm gonna tell you, but you can't share it, but
Okay,
I'll share it with everybody else. You know what I call those people?
what do you call them?
Woke supremacist.
Yeah, well, they definitely are that. Yeah,
The
both.
what the woke ones that are saying, how wrong everybody else is, they're actually woke supremacists
Yeah.
because they're telling us what we're doing wrong when in fact they're doing more wrong than what we are.
That's an apropos description. You're right. They are absolutely woke supremacists. That's a great term. I'm gonna have to borrow that one, William.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that more later. After the show, I usually keep people after in the broadcast. I usually keep people on off the air for a few minutes and talk about how they like the video. We'll do that one later.
You
Will
bet.
you like to expose the anti-God, anti-American agenda of CRT and BLM? What do you do when you do that?
Well, so first of all, so I'm the co-founder of an organization called Every Black Life Matters. So let me just back up a little bit and just tell you a little bit more about that organization. So we literally started because BLM was doing their craziness across all the country. All these major metropolitan areas throughout the country a couple years ago due to the George Floyd murder. And then so we had all these cities on fire. We had BLM literally having a party at the expense of black and brown businesses. They were telling their Antifa buddies to go ahead and burn these places down. And so and then we saw the churches going out with them, and we thought, man, this is a bridge too far. So we decided to start Every Black Life Matters. Now, here's the significance about Every Black Life Matters. Some people would say, well, that's kind of divisive, isn't it? I mean, you're borrowing from BLM, which is a divisive, racist organization, and you're still, like Every Black Life. Why don't you just say all lives matter, every life matter?
Right.
That's exactly what we're saying with our with Every Black Life Matters. And so the way that I like to explain it is people say, well, no, you're saying every Black life matters. I mean, you're still making a distinction. Yeah, we're making a distinction to the extent that if you were to put TOO at the end, it would make more sense for you. So every Black life matters too. Now, the reason why we make that statement is because Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, when she started Planned Parenthood, she decided that her infamous remark was, "We don't want the word to get out, but we want to fully exterminate the Negro population."
That's right.
So, unfortunately, Planned Parenthood has, they're in 90% of all of your urban areas within walking distance of your urban areas, black and brown areas. So, and they've been very masterful at really exterminating blacks. And so here's the problem. We have blacks being born at this rate and all other ethnicities being born at this rate. So all we're saying is, look, stop targeting black babies. Stop
Mhm.
doing that, because we believe that all lives matter.
That's
And
right.
so therefore we should be able to be born at the same rate that everybody else is. That's all we're saying. So
You know
it's
what?
not a statement of superiority, it's a statement of equality. So that's why we say, look, we're saying the same thing. All lives matter, every life matters. God made everybody equal. And so therefore we should be all together with standing united, like you say, standing united against the targeting of black life in the womb, and standing united against Planned Parenthood with their extremist, racist, eugenics type machination. So anyway, that's where that comes from. So when you say BLM and CRT, critical race theory is a hateful ideology.
Mhm.
Now, some people would say, "Well, I don't. It's just talking about history." No, it's not. Robin DiAngelo, white fragility lady, and then Ibram X. Kendi, the guy who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist. You go through their entire book; they talk about systemic racism. And they talk about racism in the form of, in the 1800s, when we had slavery and all of this kind of stuff, which was really abhorrent. It was horrible,
Right.
and nobody should applaud that time in our history. But it's important, right? Because we don't want to repeat it. But here's the thing: when they mention those times, all of these supposed CRT theologians, or people who purport CRT, critical race theory, as just, hey, it's just
Right.
history. They never ever mention that there were literally two factions, right? They always mention that all whites are complicit with slavery, right? But wait a minute, we actually literally had a civil war, and that means you
Exactly.
had some people that were coming against those that wanted to encourage slavery. Now, if anybody is familiar with why that happened, you would be familiar with the fact that we had a Southern Democrat. That's just who they were. I'm not
Right.
trying to be political here, but that's just who
Exactly.
they were. So we had the Southern Democrats who were enslaving blacks, right? And then you had the Northern. We had a political party that started as an abolitionist party. They started because they wanted to promote abolition and
Right.
promote unity and freedom for blacks, and that was the GOP, okay, in the North. And so the Civil War was made up of these two components, right? And so, but here's the thing: how is it then that somebody who lost their fathers, grandfathers,
Mhm.
uncles, nephews, all of that, right, in the Civil War, trying to fight to set people like me free, how
Mhm.
are they actually fully complicit with slavery when they literally put their family, progeny and their lineage on the line to go and fight the South?
Right.
So if you really want to be accurate, school boards, and accurate, you CRT proponents, you need to say, look, the Southern Democrats fully enslaved blacks. They hated blacks. They're racist. They're white supremacists. And it was
Mhm.
them who actually did it. They will
That's
never do
right.
it. Our kids don't learn that, right? So,
Right.
so all of these, hey, we just want to tell accurate history. No, you don't. Because if you wanted to tell accurate history, Miss History teacher in his public school
Right.
system, you would
Exactly.
go ahead and say, look, the Democrats did all of these horrible evils
That's right.
against the blacks. They started the KKK, they did the Jim Crow laws, they did the all of these horrible things against blacks during the 1800s, and of course slavery and segregation and everything else. But they never do that. So that's how you know that they're insincere. There's
That's
no
right.
uniting. We can't even begin to unite if people won't even accept part of their own stuff. This is
That's
their
right.
history. It was horrible. And I'm sure that most Democrats today would say, well, hey, that was horrible and we shouldn't have done it. But they won't accept it. They won't ever put it out
Right.
there.
They won't own it.
They won't own it. Why?
And what and they like to say, oh, the North was the ones who were going, the Northern Democrats were the ones that were going to free the slaves. But what they don't say is they didn't free their own slaves during the war.
Yeah,
And they
well, There
And,
was just a handful of Northern Democrats. I mean, come on, there was very few Northern Democrats. I mean, you had a few abolitionist Democrats,
right.
yeah, but it was
Exactly.
not enough
Now,
to make a difference in the war. I mean, this is
now
they
something
lost
to your
100,000, a couple of 100,000 young men on each side, so it was horrible. Yeah,
it was horrible, and they don't talk about how America fought to end slavery, but today in modern times, there's more slavery today in modern
oh yeah,
times than there ever was during the Civil War, and nobody's doing anything to stop it now.
absolutely. There's
America fought a war to stop it, and we stopped it, here in America, but yet it's going on all over the world, and nobody is talking about that right now whatsoever.
absolutely
The other thing
today.
that you mentioned about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, nobody talks about how before Planned Parenthood, that the black population was on the rise
Yeah,
in America, was on
absolutely.
the rise, and after Planned Parenthood, it's now in a decline,
Yeah,
and
we
nobody talks about that.
absolutely, no doubt about it. So we're being disproportionately targeted and exterminated to the extent that blacks only make up 13% of the population. But it's even worse than that. Blacks make up 13% of the population. Of that, half are women. Of that, half are childbearing. So you got a affected 3% demographic, give or take. And you've got 3% demographic making up 40% of all abortions. Now, I don't know how you do that, other than you're specifically, strategically targeting for extermination per Margaret Sanger's vision. And so that's still going on to this very day.
And you know what? You just gave me a new thought. I have to thank you for this, Kevin. Back then, Planned Parenthood may have been to exterminate the black population. Today, let's just say that it's the good intentions of the Democrats to give women's rights, through I'm right there with you, you know, and that it is the unintended consequences that the black population is paying the price. At some point, doesn't somebody wake up and say, wait a minute, the black population is paying the price for these so-called women's rights that we're pushing through Planned Parenthood? Nobody talks about that.
Well, yeah. So we have heard Planned Parenthood come back and say, yeah, we know that Margaret Sanger said those things and she was a bigot and stuff. This is the Planned Parenthood in New York, so they actually owned up to it. But then all the other ones are still, and they said, so we changed our tactics. So we don't really view blacks that way. And so my retort back to them is always, look, okay, if you've truly changed and if this is all about women's rights to choose and the women's health care, then guess what? All of your demographic research is done. You can go ahead and take those 90% of those Planned Parenthoods that are within walking distance of Black and Brown communities
Right.
today and go ahead and put them in the back end of every Walmart and Target in the country because they've done the demographic research. They tell you where women congregate. If it's just
Right.
about
Yeah.
women's health, then
Right.
put it where the women congregate. Make it easy, make it convenient. So put it out where the WalMarts and Targets are. All that
and,
demographic research is done for you. It's fine,
and
but
what
they
is the
won't do it. That's still 90% in Black community.
and what is the statistic on how many women babies they think are being aborted? So not only are they killing minorities, they're also killing the female population during abortion.
Yeah. So here's the real, and this is the topic that I cover in my book. Okay.
There you
So
go.
so here's where all this stuff comes from. Now I talk to people and they say, look, I believe in a woman's right to choose. And I say, okay, fine. So let me give you a little background. And then if you still believe that, then you're going to have to own it. Okay. So the background is this. So there was a man by the name of Charles Darwin and
Oh,
his
wow.
first cousin by the name of Francis Galton. Okay. So you had two guys, Charles Darwin, Francis Galton, and they're the fathers of eugenics. Okay.
Okay.
So Francis Galton was a world-class statistician. He was actually a pioneer for modern day statistics. Okay. So he took a look at the demographic global ethnic populations. And he says to his older cousin, Charles Darwin, he says, look, Charles, we're going to have a bit of a problem because we know that we, white, Caucasian, Aryans, Europeans, we know that we have the premier intellect and premier in as far as resourcefulness and compared to any other ethnicity.
Mhm.
But he said all other ethnicities are overpopulating. They're populating at a much faster rate, and they're going to essentially, overtake the pure white
Right.
Caucasian population. So he says, why don't we come up with a scientific justification for exterminating these? Because, we want to protect our kind, right? So they concocted out of whole cloth, no scientific justification whatsoever. They concocted eugenics. Eugenics is actually a Greek term. It means well born. Okay. So what
Mm.
they said is, look, if you're well born, if you're white, you're good. But if you happen to have any deformities, if you happen to be of another ethnicity, you're fair game. And this is literally how they started eugenics. Now, remember, goes back in history. Hitler, Mao, Stalin, Lenin, all of them were mass genocidal despots, okay, for
Mhm.
mass genocide, right? And they used, all of them used Charles Darwin as justification for exterminating populations. So
And see,
Darwin, so literally eugenics started that way. Now, when it came to America, we did mass sterilizations and abortions as a proponent or component, if you will, of eugenics. Now, that means that any acceptance of abortion whatsoever today, you must own that it is white supremacist and racist. That's where it comes from. That's why it was started.
but you know what else, though, Kevin, you're bringing to my mind? I love this conversation. You brought several new thoughts to my mind. I want to thank you for that.
Hmm.
Is that nobody is talking about how whether you want to believe that it's for women's rights or women's health care or that it's not racist, whatever you want to believe, the reality is it's a playbook. And it's a
Yeah,
playbook that's right now being played on the black population and on, and in the name of women's rights or healthcare. But the reality is they're any population or any ethnic group or on any group of people in the world simply by saying, okay, we're going to take this playbook and apply it to whatever color, whatever religion we want to at this time in order to be able to achieve their goal to, you know, promote their ethnicity.
that's
Ethnicity.
right. That's right.
That's
So,
it.
so that's literally why it was started. So, and because that's the just justification, the genesis of abortion today is
Well,
the white supremacist plot and the racist plot of Darwin and his first cousin Francis Galton.
you cover this in your book, Woke Up, right?
Absolutely, all of it is covered. So I get you
Well,
right
where
down to the
where where can
taproot
people
of
get
what's.
where can people get that book anyway?
You go to Amazon, just typed in "woked up" WOKED up,
Okay.
and type in my last name McGary. It'll come up. It's all 5 stars. Everybody's loving it. It's incredible. It's all footnoted. Everything's there. No guesswork. You could have exact quotes, private letters. Everything is in that book. And I
Oh,
strongly encourage your viewers to go out and get it because
oh
we
yeah,
have to
absolutely.
we have to be able to combat wokeism. Wokeism is corrosive. It's dangerous. It's sinister, and we can't combat it unless we understand where it all comes from, and we actually have talking points that we can make sense of. And so this book actually gives you everything you need as far as ammunition and how to talk about it and how to bring others along. See, the culture right now is has so much pressure in it that
Mhm.
it can grip and sweep people along, even though those people don't even know what it's all about. So people will identify as being woke because they think it's a cool thing or they think that everybody else is and they don't want to be canceled if they say, no, I'm not. So they're swept into this thing. Now, that means that there are a lot of people out there that are moderately thinking that if they knew more about wokeism, what it is and what it's not, what it's rooted in, which is in white supremacy and racism, and what it's not, then they would have the ability to walk away from it. But right now, we don't give them much of the ability to make that distinction.
Well, I want to talk about some other things too, but you'll see it at the bottom. I'm telling people while we're talking where to get your book, Woked Up at Amazon. And so we get the spelling there. What is the new specialized domain of diversity, equity, and inclusion? What is that anyway? I know we're talking about it being a
Yeah.
fraud, but what is that? I've seen that on some of your sites before.
Yeah, yeah. So what I've done is I've gone and I've written a couple of articles about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Are these your new articles that you've got that have recently come out yet?
No, these are articles written
Okay.
probably 6, 7 months ago,
All right.
and even longer.
Okay.
But they're on our website. You can get the articles. Everything I've written is on the website.
Okay.
And I believe that one was in American Thinker. I'm not sure, but it could have been in American Thinker, maybe in Town Hall, but I think it was American Thinker. But anyway, here's the premise. If you consider the definition of diversity, and then you consider the definition of equity, and you consider the definition of inclusion, then how is it that the majority of supposed DEI experts and professionals, the overwhelming majority, are leftists, progressives, and they're pro abortion? Now, here's the problem: diversity, by virtue of what the definition of diversity means, is that I, as an officer, is going to make sure that I have a fully diverse representative workforce. Equity means, now we know what equity means,
Yeah.
unequal outcomes. I mean, they're trying to say equal outcomes,
Right.
but really it's unequal, because if you're highly qualified, you could be passed up because they want to give somebody else a shot, and
Exactly.
so instead of opportunity, they're giving people opportunities based on outcomes. Okay.
Right.
So equity means, though, in essence, that everybody gets a piece of that pie, right? And then inclusion means that everyone should be included. Everyone should have the opportunity to come to the table. Okay. So those are the three definitions. Now, how is it that you have so many people in the DEI profession that literally stand by Planned Parenthood, right? They're pro aborts 100%, and stand by Planned Parenthood, knowing that Planned Parenthood targets Black communities.
Mhm.
These people are not
Right.
dumb. They're intellectuals. They know.
Right.
So how could you purport to be a DEI expert and yet you're pro abort, while Planned Parenthood targets Blacks, which then significantly decreases the opportunities for diversity, which certainly takes away opportunities for equity, and
Correct.
certainly does not include enough or a proportion of the Blacks that should be included in that pool. So I just called him. I said, "Look, you're a fraud." Now, there is one person who actually did it right, and it's Governor Youngkin over in Virginia.
There we
Uh,
go. Good. Yeah.
yeah, so he has Angela Saylor as a diversity, opportunity, and inclusion. Okay. So what he says is, look, everybody should have the opportunity. We're not going to guarantee equal outcomes. That's ridiculous. People have different skill sets, competencies, whatever. Why would we say, we're going to give everybody, this sort of
Right.
equity
Right.
position, right? So what he said is he's diversity, opportunity, and inclusion, DOI. And then he said, but Angela, it's her number one goal is, first, she is an ambassador for the unborn, an ambassador for the unborn. So, so that's how you must view DEI if you're sincere.
Right.
If you're sincere, you say, first, you got to be an ambassador for the unborn, because that's what's going to allow diversity to
Mhm.
flourish. You got to be an ambassador for opportunity, so everybody can at least have equal opportunity. And then, of course, we want everybody to be included. So you must be able to protect and preserve life, so everybody can be born and then have an opportunity to participate in our great state or a great workforce.
I think equal opportunity equals freedom,
Right,
whereas equity and social justice are the things that
right.
equal control, to where we're not able to have the freedoms that we need to be able to create the opportunities for everybody and more people.
That's right.
If
That's
that makes
exactly
sense.
right.
So you talk about social justice and skin color in America. What do you talk about when you talk about that? Or
So,
skin colorism, as you point, as you say.
yeah, so social justice really is a euphemism, if you will, for Marxism, right? Social justice is all about wealth redistribution. Social justice is about, look, you have something. I don't necessarily have those same things. We need to be able to take a little bit more of yours and redistribute it for people like me, so we can have sort of equal, standards, right? And so social justice is about, they say it's about equality, but again, equality means equal opportunity.
Mhm.
Equality does not mean that everybody should have equal outcome.
Right.
Now, but here's the crazy part. You have social justice warriors like LeBron James, right? Making 40, $50 million a year, whatever he makes,
Right.
right? So he's always, I'm a social justice warrior, and he's all on the forefront and always in a frenzy. He's always hysterical. He's shrill. He's like,
Right,
crazy.
exactly.
So he's always out there. My question to LeBron would be, well, wait a minute now. You're a social justice warrior, bro. You're making $50 million a year. Now, if you were sincere about what you believe, you would make sure that every cheerleader, every coach, every
Water boy,
yeah,
every
everybody
yeah.
on that
Mm.
court who supports what you're doing would have an equal or nearly equal piece of your pie. But he would always say, I'm sure, just because anybody would say this, look, I'm the one with the talent, though. I'm the one with the
Yeah.
talent. But well,
I'm
wait a
the
minute. You
voice
can't
of the
have
yeah.
it both ways. You
Right.
can't, you know, either you're a social justice warrior and you really believe that everybody should have, an equal piece of the
You know,
pie,
Kevin,
or you
that's a
don't.
great that's a great point. A lot of these rich people are out there preaching social justice and equity. However, they're not giving up their pie
Nope.
or their portion of the pie to be able to spread it out what they're preaching,
Exactly.
in America. So, how do we achieve equality without trying to push equity in America?
The best way for us to achieve equality is to start way back when children, first of all, everybody should have an equal opportunity to just be born. Okay.
Right,
You shouldn't have all other ethnicities here and blacks here. Just give us equality. First, equality begins in the womb. Any
right.
kind of justice begins in the womb. Okay. So justice begins in the womb. Okay. So we have equality there. Then we have equality in our early childhood development and educational system, which means that parents should have the opportunity to include their children in charter schools, private schools, whatever it is. We need school choice. Right now, we don't have an equal opportunity to learn. We just
Mhm.
don't. And it's because of your socioeconomic status. Now, we have some families, like our
Right.
family, we made the sacrifice to put our kids through private school. Okay, but that's not everybody can't do that. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, and so to me, if you want a better, more equitable society where everybody gets an opportunity to go to great schools, everybody gets an opportunity to get great degrees, and
Mhm.
everybody then will have the opportunity to get great pay, you have to start at the school level, because that
Exactly.
school sets you up for where you can potentially go as far as college,
Mhm.
right? So if you're born in a strictly inner city dilapidated school system, and you happen to graduate, but it was a public school system education,
Right.
and you have somebody closely associated, but in a suburb, they're in the same state, and
Exactly.
maybe 25 miles away, in a suburb that went to a better school system or a private school system. Guess who's going to get the opportunity to go to the better colleges? Now, once you go to the better college, that sets you up for the better pay. Once you get the better pay, that sets you up for better, opportunities to, go up the corporate ladder.
Mm.
It's all sort of infused in that, but it starts at the school level. So, if we really want opportunity, equality for everybody, give everybody the same capacity to get equal competencies, get equal education, get equal, all the way up.
But also what I like to throw in is take the stigma away from, how to teach people how to have labor jobs. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
how
oh big time.
I mean, we've been encouraging our kids, that
Yes,
they wanna become doctors, lawyers, engineers, instead of saying, "Look, you could go be a plumber, an electrician, and
that's
make, a lot more money in a lot less
absolutely
time with skills," and we've taken away the pride
100%.
in our work ethic.
The
you know.
trades are huge, and we should encourage trade schools.
So that's the other
Uh,
thing that I see as a key factor in this puzzle is that they've taken trade schools and the trades out of our community,
yep,
which disproportionately hurts minorities, people
exactly,
that are middle income and lower, and
exactly.
keeps them. That's the other thing I was talking about that on a regular radio show earlier. Is that government wants people who are dependent on government. They
Yes,
don't want people that are independent of government. So
that's right.
when you look at how bureaucracy is growing and you look at how government puts people on programs, but it doesn't give them a way out. It says, if you meet these standards, you get this government program. But if you excel above these government programs, you're kicked off.
That's
It
right.
doesn't say, hey, look, if you do something different to get off these programs, we're going to keep you on them to give you a platform or a bridge to the next one. In the meantime, they've taken away trade school
Yes.
and career opportunities for the people in those brackets that would help them get on their own feet without government assistance.
100%. I
You know,
agree 100%. We need to bring back the dignity and integrity of trade schools. There's many, many people that are really not, they just don't want to do education for 18 years. They'd much rather, look, I'm good with my hands. I'm good with
yeah,
figuring stuff out. Let me go and take a trade. But that's de-emphasized. It has a stigma, like you say, attached to it, and we need to honor those jobs. Those jobs are wonderful, and
we
they
need those.
pay exceptionally well, and it creates entrepreneurship, and that's what's missing in a big way.
Exactly right. And
Yeah,
putting pride back in having a good work ethic.
absolutely, absolutely.
Speaking of work ethic and education, I think that there's another thing in our education system that's under attack. I think that our education system is under attack via critical race theory.
Yeah,
And the narrative on the leftist side is that if you talk about critical race theory, it's because you're not sympathetic to either minorities or people of color. If you're fighting against critical race theory, it's because you're really a closet racist yourself.
yeah,
When the
right.
reality is that what critical race theory and what a lot of people are trying to show is that critical race theory is actually an attack on not only our education system, but it's an attack on our youth. And
Absolutely,
it teaches our youth more about being racist than it does about teaching them about racism.
absolutely right.
How would you deconstruct critical race theory in America?
Well, we had a wonderful, wonderful lesson in history that was taught to us by a man by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
Before, when he was coming up, and what he fought for was, too often people with his skin color, my skin color, would show up for jobs, and they'd be summarily dismissed, like, "Oh no," and they wouldn't even be given a chance because they were the wrong skin color. Immutable characteristics were being used against them, and they were being prejudiced against,
Mhm.
and they were being judged immediately without being taken seriously. So, what Dr. Martin Luther King said in the 1960s, he says, "Look, I think we need to begin to judge one another based on content of character, not color of skin." Now,
Mhm.
this started all kinds of great, great innovations within our workforces. You know what workforces did then? In their human resources departments, they put in ombudsmen, they put in various reforms in policy, they put in all kinds of stopgaps that would prevent them from being sued by the EEOC and other government and non-government entities, private attorneys. So they really needed to protect their interests, and so they said, "Okay, you're right. Let's just judge one another based on content of character. You show up, I'm not going to dismiss you. I'm going to let you
Exactly
tell me."
right.
And so that was a great, great, great lesson. What we did with critical race theories, we're saying, no, 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 no. We want to go back to judging people strictly based on immutable characteristics. If you're white, guess what? You're racist. Period. Hard stop. End of story. Nothing you can do
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
That's just the
Exactly.
way it is.
Yeah.
And so that literally teaches hate and racism. So, like you said, you're saying it teaches our youth. I'm saying, no, no, no. It teaches our children, it teaches our toddlers
Right.
how to hate
Exactly.
other people before they even. So I don't know about you, William, but when I was growing up, I couldn't even, I'm not a hateful person, so I couldn't even resonate
Right.
with that hate emotion until I was well in my maybe early 20s, maybe 19. I didn't even know what hate. We had
Exactly.
beef. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
grew
have
up in
beef.
inner city San
Yeah.
Francisco. We had beef with people, but I didn't hate them. I mean,
Right.
that's a foreign thing for me.
Right.
But what they're doing now is they're literally teaching children how to hate,
Right.
how to do this, right?
Exactly.
That's child abuse. That's child abuse. How are you teaching children how
Yeah.
to hate somebody else based on immutable characteristics that by definition is racist?
They've
So
taken. Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
So what I tell people is if you want a definition of systemic racism, it's critical race theory. Because here's what happens. Systemic means everyone within the system has a particular ideology or way of being that they promote, and it sort of self perpetuates throughout the system. It's
Right.
systemic, up, down, in and out, through and through. It's systemic, right?
Mhm.
So think about this. Critical race theory theorists or professors and all those people that are embracing it, they promote within their system of thinking a particular ideology, and it self
Right.
perpetuates throughout the system. So if you want to know what, and of course it is racist by definition, that's just what it is. Anything that is judging one another based upon immutable characteristics is the actual literal definition of racism, right? So since CRT is racist, and since it literally is systemic, it's the perfect definition for systemic racism. It meets the definition. So I tell people don't run away from that when they say, "Oh, America is systemically racist and this and that," and you systemic. You just say, "Look, I think there is a. I don't agree with you about America, but I think you're hitting on something. There is systemic racism, and actually, literally, it's critical race theory."
What's interesting is they're teaching critical race theory now, and showing people how to be racist and hateful, but they're not teaching critical thinking
Right.
anymore, which teaches people how to think for themselves and realize, well, how to be woke in their own beliefs instead of woke in the way of critical race theory on how to hate other people. You
Right.
know, and to your point, how can our country be systemically racist when we had a war where millions of people fought to end racism in our country? And on top of that, you gave me a lot of good thoughts. I appreciate that. Critical race theory is almost growing the same way our bureaucracy grows. Bureaucracy, I believe, is one of the worst things for our country, is because our congressmen pass these bills which grows bureaucracy, and the bureaucrats need to have their jobs, so they keep perpetuating these same policies and plans and programs as a way to keep themselves in business, much the same way that critical race theory, you see where I'm going with
Yeah.
this,
Oh yeah. Oh
is
yeah.
is
You're
is
right.
growing
Absolutely.
amongst itself and becomes this behemoth that if you
Absolutely.
stand out against it, you're the bad person,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly right. It's
And
become its own cottage industry, and therefore it'll never die because the people within that systemically racist CRT are the ones that actually benefit from it because they keep layering on stuff. Okay,
I
if you don't like and if you're against the green movement, you're systemically racist against environmentalism.
yeah,
If you're not all in on the trans teaching of children, well, you're transphobic, where that means that you're systemically racist, you're white supremacist, you're so it's like, well, when does all this ever end? It just never. They just keep layering things
ki
on the top of it. And,
kinda like that woke supremacy.
yeah, exactly,
You
exactly.
know? Well, you're a voting rights guy, pro-life issues, fatherhood, criminal justice, but how do you tie pro voting rights into all that? Because I'm a big election integrity guy. So I've been doing a lot of election integrity things. As a matter of fact, I was speaking to one of my listeners just last night who's like, you're always talking about election integrity election fraud is only 1% of our elections. And might I point out that in a lot of these congressional races, they won by less than a percent in some of
Yeah.
these races. But what I like to talk about is how important it is to keep bringing out our voting rights, because if we don't keep talking about our voting rights, we're going to lose our voting rights.
Yeah.
And
So where we stand as far as voting is concerned is that everybody needs to have a an ID. Everybody.
Mhm.
So that's fundamentally what we mean. I mean, we're not saying extend to every felon the voter rights. We're saying everybody who's a citizen needs to have an ID to vote.
We have
Uh,
a constitutional amendment on the ballot here in Louisiana on that in December 10th, where the constitutional amendment number 1 will be changed, that only citizens can vote.
yes,
Now, what's interesting is when you read it, it's almost worded that if you vote for it, you think you might be voting that only citizens can vote, but if you vote against it, you're actually or the voting for it could actually change the national laws. It's really convoluted.
and they do that on purpose. This
They
is the way
do.
they play their game, right?
They absolutely
So
do. They
here's the
create the
deal.
back door for them.
Our Constitution allows that every citizen who's over 18 should have the right to vote. And so all we're saying is, look, let's keep that standard. It's done well by us all these years. But let's also make sure that everyone's vote is not disenfranchised, which means that if you have voter rolls that are bloated with dead people, dead pets, dead,
Yeah.
civil right war,
Horrible. Yeah.
civil war warriors and American Revolution warriors, these dead people have been dead for generations.
Walt Disney
Uh,
characters.
yeah, Disney character. Take all that stuff off, right? And just have an appropriate voter roll that is really conducive to whoever lives in those particular
Mhm.
places today. Not if they moved out last year, that should be cleaned. We should be constantly cleaning our voter rolls. Okay, so that means that then those people that are there to vote can only vote, are citizens. If somebody votes and they put their uncle and their dog and their dead, twice dead grandparents,
Mhm.
then that means that everyone else is being, or illegals, right? These people who come over and are completely undocumented, we don't even know who they are, and they vote. That means that we're being disenfranchised. So we used to hear these hysterical, shrill voices from these leftists like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson about disenfranchisement and voting. The real disenfranchisement is to all Americans who, when we cast
Mhm.
our votes are nullified because someone else who is not supposed to be voting
That's
is
right.
voting. And so that means that are valid, especially if they're voting against something we're voting for. It's nullified.
Right.
So we need to stop that if we want integrity in our voting. Now, number two, we need to get off of these digital voting systems. And what I mean by that, these electronic, voting. I think we can go back.
And marked paper ballots.
Yes. Yeah. I think we can go back to paper ballot. And if not, if we say no, we have to stay on these crazy machines because we already spent hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on them. Okay. Every single ballot needs to be watermarked
Mhm.
and tracked. And
That's
it's
right.
not hard. I mean, that's easy. It's not,
Exactly.
that's an easy fix, right? So watermarked and tracked, and signatures need to be verified, digitally verified,
Mhm.
not and so there are ways that we can improve it if they say we have to stay on these systems. But I don't trust these systems because they can write an algorithm on the back end that that's already there. I mean, we've seen these things happen
Yeah,
already,
we
right?
we we see we've seen it.
Yeah,
Although they say that's conspiracy thinking,
no,
that these algorithms, but people will say, "Oh, our electronic voting systems are secure." However, if people are willing to break in, had to break into your checking accounts, they're illegal. They're able to break into your credit cards. They're able to steal your identity, steal your passwords, break into your electronic records. Why wouldn't they want to steal, break into our elections? And
absolutely.
so I'll always talk about that too.
Yeah, so we actually have a selection process where the oligarchs and the kleptocrats select who they want, and we're I think in a lot of ways, in certain districts, I'm not saying this is across the United States, but in certain uh, high value areas, we're participating in part of the scheme and not
So
really,
some
you know.
people some people might ask, why would those people wanted to, or why would they would have wanted to select Donald Trump to win the election? And my answer to
Well, it
that,
didn't work then. No, they
yeah,
didn't. They didn't. No, no. Donald Trump was a wild card. No one saw that coming,
yeah.
and they didn't think they had to pull out all the stops for that. There was no. They thought, I mean, even up until the
They
day
thought Hillary
before.
had it.
Yeah, well, I mean, up to the day before, you had some polls that said, it's a 98% chance that Hillary's going to win. She was up, in most areas, 20, 30 points. I mean, it was crazy. So they didn't think they had to do anything. We don't have to pull out any stops and do a
And
big cheat.
election integrity, in my opinion, hurts the working class
Yeah,
people down.
yeah,
When there's election integrity, and I've worked with a lot of groups in the local in Louisiana, and I'm looking at how many bad registrations we have. A
wow,
lot of people are like, "Oh, our elections are secure." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand." Like I ran for office 3 years ago, by the way, Kevin.
wow,
And when I went and I got one of the list from the Secretary of State's office, when I knocked on doors, I saw 6, 8 registrations in a house where there's 2 people living.
yeah, yeah,
I saw, and today they're canvassing neighborhoods all over our country in Louisiana, which I'm talking to the people and finding out how many bad registrations we have, how many people registered to vote in PO boxes,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
abandoned houses. But I'm moving us along because I want people to get a chance to really know a lot more about you than just the things we've been talking about. You talk about real justice from womb to tomb. That that I tell you why that intrigued me, because I know we're pro-life and we had a pro-life conversation, but after that, we're going into nuclear family, fatherhood. I have a feeling that this womb to tomb thing goes into family, and I love this.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so womb to tomb means from conception to the grave and every phase of life in between. We're advocating to help support Black life because Black life is not only targeted for extermination in the womb, but there's specific plights that are put up policy wise in throughout the country, policies especially of leftist progressives. I don't mean that to be political. I'm just saying,
Right, exactly.
like for instance the fatherhood thing. LBJ started that, right? He says, look, we're going to have these n-words voting for us for the next 200 years,
Right.
and his whole idea was make them dependents, make them get rid of the fathers, and then they're fully dependent on the government, and therefore if they're dependent on us, they're going to go to the ballot box and always vote for us because
Exactly.
we're their paycheck, right? And so that is a specific, targeted, strategic plight that that disproportionately affects people in the Black community. It affects all communities, but in the Black community, it's a real stronghold. Okay, the fatherhood thing. There's other systemic plights as well, like the non-school choice. This is on purpose. Everybody knows. Okay, the social anthropologists have already done studies, and they said, look, we can reduce poverty and crime by 50 to 70% if we had school choice programs,
Mhm.
right? And if we encourage fathers in the homes or just to be connected with their children. So we understand the recipe to make it work, to reduce crime and reduce poverty. Everybody should want that. So why then are we specifically making sure that the poor communities have no school choice? I mean, some states are saying, look, we're going to have school choice. Like Florida, I think they have it. I think Arizona is going to have whatever, but very few. All right, so uh, there is a specific need to keep blacks and black and brown communities dependent because they need that vote.
That's right.
And so when we say we're looking out for black life as it is targeted from conception to the grave, we mean every phase of black life in between, and that means we stand up against these social plights that are purposely put there so blacks could be dependent and not be entrepreneurs, not be all they can be because they have these barriers, right?
Mhm.
And so those are the types of things that we mean when we say that.
You know,
Now, the way,
Kevin,
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
The way that we work with fatherhood, just real quick, we recognize that fathers, this is a hookup culture. It's been a hookup culture for the past maybe 20, 30 years, which
Right.
means that you may have a kid here, you may have a kid there, you may have, 4, 5, 8, 10, whatever.
Baby
And
daddy.
yeah, baby daddies all over, right? Baby mamas all over. And so what we say is, look, it's not realistic in that case to say that, look, I'm going to be inside the nuclear family and all these different, most of these women don't even want to see you
Right.
again, don't want to hear from you. But we encourage fathers, look, just connect with your children. They need to know you. They need to know that you love them. They
Yep.
need to know that you care about them. They need to know that you're going to check on them. They need to know that they can come and talk to you about anything. That's what we're saying. So fatherhood is more complex these days than it was in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. But it is definitely not so complex that you can't deal with it and we just throw up our hands. We can deal with it. Men need to connect to their children
Mhm.
and remain connected. That's
You know,
what I mean by
I
fatherhood.
I believe that the policies that we've been referring to aren't just dismantling the Black community, they're dismantling all communities.
Sure,
And they do
absolutely.
it and they do it in a lot of different ways. Like they might target the Black communities, but the reality is those Black communities are surrounded by white communities, and the crime that's coming out of the Black communities are affecting all the white communities. And let's just say that it's not even affecting the rich people as much, it's affecting middle income and down people because all those communities are more congregated, in such a way that the poverty, the crime, the lack of parenthood, the lack of good families,
Yeah,
all is pervasive in all these different communities. And
absolutely.
on a side note, you talk about how they took fathers out of the home. It goes back to how government has designed a lot of these systems to make people dependent instead of independent. Because if they really wanted to secure the nuclear family, to be able to keep fathers in the home, they would create these policies and said, if there's a father in the home, you get maybe more welfare,
Yes,
or maybe you get
that's
more
what we
opportunity.
advocate for. Yes.
Instead, they say, oh no, the only way you can get this welfare or this housing is if there's not a father in the home. And now what they've done is they've made a family dependent. That family, by the rules and regulations of those programs, they can't make more money. They can't have a father in the home. So they're being dismantled, not even realizing it. And as a result, all of our communities, white, black, poor, rich, are all suffering as a result of not having fathers in the home, the
Absolutely
nuclear
right.
family, or programs by the government that would create bridges to be able to help people get out of poverty instead of keeping them in poverty.
Absolutely right. That's
What
exactly right.
what I see
Well
you're a
said.
free market guy. I want to talk about that because I love capitalism. And I
Yes.
always say if we got government out of our business, got government, had less regulation, and we let the free markets roll and let capitalism, progress, we'd be a lot better off. Which, by the way, is on a side note, before you answer that question, I want to point out that before the Civil Rights Act, statistics show that black families had not only a higher marriage rate and a lower divorce rate, but before the Civil Rights Act, that black communities had a higher
They
entrepreneurship
did.
rate.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to free markets. And what do
Yeah.
you have to say about that?
So, we always hear these days or the past maybe 20, 30 years, excuse me, we have these people that have graduated college and they try to wax eloquent by telling us the merits of Marxism, socialism, Marxism,
Mm.
whatever. And the reality is that everywhere that's been tried, everywhere in the universe where that's been
Mhm.
tried, it's been a disaster, especially for lower income and middle income families. They've been devastated. So, if you really want to help the poor, you really need to focus in on capitalism and entrepreneurship. What helped during Reconstruction, and so I'm also the president and chairman of the Frederick Douglass Foundation of California. What happened during Reconstruction, people like Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, and other great Black heroes and statesmen, statespeople, they were able to embrace capitalism in such a way that they actually not only provided for themselves, but grew our community exponentially because they created jobs and they created all these opportunities within the community. They didn't need a handout, the 40 acres and the mule that Abraham Lincoln was looking at.
Right.
They needed just capitalism. And everywhere where capitalism, free markets, and entrepreneurialism has been tried on the planet, we've had successes.
That's right.
This is what's pulled Africa up. This is what's pulled, prior, what pulled Venezuela up. Venezuela was a wonderful capitalist experiment
Absolutely.
until the communists came back, took it over, and then now look at it. I mean, it's horrible.
After they got electronic voting machines. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. 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 So the reason why we embrace and entrepreneurship and free markets and capitalism is because it works. Yeah, we
Yeah,
want
exactly.
people to be successful. That's the way you do it.
I love that. So, a couple more questions. I know we got to wrap it up here in a few minutes. Criminal justice reform is often something that's thought of as only a Democrat issue. That only only left leaning people think about criminal justice reform. And sometimes criminal justice reform, when you bring it up, they go, "Oh, that's those Democrat issues. That's only the people that want to let the criminals out of jail."
Yeah.
You bring up I like the way that you talk about criminal justice reform, and I'd love for you to share that with
Yeah.
our listeners.
So the way that we talk about it is we like the way President Trump was incorporating criminal justice reform. He was looking at these horrible cases, thousands and tens of thousands of cases, where people were unjustly given 25 years to life for relatively small offenses, especially in today's terms, small offenses. Okay.
Right.
So what that meant, so what he was doing was literally correcting the legislation that Joe Biden championed. So a lot of people are not familiar with
Yeah,
Joe
nobody talk about
Biden's
yeah.
Joe Biden's 1994 crime bill. And he beat his chest. This is my crime bill, and I'm going. Even if you have just a $5 little piece of crack, you're going to go to jail for 15 to 25 years. And he did nothing about the kilos, the drug
Right.
dealers
Exactly.
who were dealing cocaine. He only went after crack because that was a epidemic
Poor
within the black
poor man. Yeah,
community.
the
Yeah,
poor
this
yeah.
was poor man. So he specifically targeted. This is his racist mind. Biden is an abject racist. You can't even argue.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
You haven't
this is
hide
just
it
what it
anymore.
is. Yeah,
Right.
this is what it is. So he literally, when we hear about mass incarceration, we hear these shrill leftist progressives. Oh, mass incarceration. I always remind, wait, baby. Your boy, who you voted for, Joe
Right.
Biden, that's his work. That's his signature work.
Yeah, right.
So,
Exactly.
so we need criminal justice reforms because we still have people that are suffering with these horrible sentences because they were mandatory for small, small little usable their personal stash of marijuana or crack,
Yeah.
and they were going 25 to life. Okay, so that's why we need criminal. I am not for emptying prisons. We have some evil people in the world. We have evil.
Exactly.
And so I'm not for defunding police or bail, cashless bail or emptying our prisons. That's insanity. That's only people who are rich, elitist, leftist progressives want that because they've never lived in the hood. They have
But
no
don't some
idea.
of those people get profit from the jail systems?
And then some of them get profits, but they've never lived there. Have no idea how dangerous it is. They have complete, and they have security guards and security fences around their property now, so they're completely insulated from it. So for them, they oh yeah, we can empty the prison. Are you crazy?
And
You
you're
ever
not
been
looking
to the hood? You have no idea how
and
evil
you're
it can
not
be.
looking for some sort of equity to be able to have a reason for emptying out for freeing the people that are in there for some of these crimes. You're looking for merely giving some of these people the equality that they deserve, the opportunity they deserve to be able to get the reform that they're capable of
Yes.
to be able to not only save society, but I guess save humans or
Yeah.
lead by example, put fathers back in homes. Is it
Reunite the
all
family.
connected?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. A lot of those people, they had small offenses back then, 20 years ago. And, and now it's time. They learned their lesson. Okay, we got it. Let these people go. I mean, it's fine. They're not, they haven't killed anybody. They haven't raped anybody. They haven't done any of the heinous crime. They just had a small amount of
Yeah,
marijuana or
exactly
crack.
right.
Come on.
Yeah. You're not asking to legalize a drug. You're just asking to say, look, and some of that, by the way, it goes back to what we talked a few minutes ago. Sometimes the reform that's needed doesn't just help the community that's affected by it, it helps all the communities because like I said, with criminal reform, you're now helping that community, but you're leading by example. You said, look, as a community, we're trying to do something to be able to help everybody. And in the process, we go back to putting fathers back in homes.
That's right.
We go back to creating families, getting people off the dependency of government,
Yes.
capitalism. What about violence? In the process of all this, we have a high violence rate. What do you have to say about violence?
Well, violence, what we need to do is refund and then some police. We need to put the appropriate amounts of budgets in our law enforcement and make sure that we have law enforcement officers staffed at the levels they were several years ago. We need to stop the no cash bail nonsense. That is crazy what we're doing. And we need to go ahead and make sure that everybody, now we do need equal justice. We should have, some way of equalizing different sentences, across the states. Because right now, depending on where you murder somebody or what kind of crime you rape here or there, you get these varying sentences, and I think that's unfair. So
Is
I
it all
think
color or is it some of it financial?
I think that just different states have evolved their various sentencing laws very differently, and I think that we
Okay.
need to come up with a way to make it just straight across the board. You do a
A
rape
national
wherever it
guideline.
is, you going. You kill somebody wherever it is, you're going to be going 25, whatever it is. We need to standardize and not give judges so much discrepancy, because we see what's happening right now. These judges have so much discrepancy now
Hmm.
that they say, well, we let them go.
A
Yeah, I
lot
mean,
of a lot of these judges are legislating from the bench.
exactly.
They're able and what happens is, to your point, and you made an excellent point here, that a lot of these judges will let a criminal, they'll lock up a criminal based on something, and then the next judge that comes in behind them or in another court that borders them it has a similar situation and says, because there's precedent, for this, we got to do it this way. They don't want to override that judge.
Right.
So that mentality kind of pervades into the communities in
Yeah.
such a way, that now nobody's getting the equality, or the equality they deserve, I guess is what
Yeah.
we're getting
Exactly
to.
right. Yeah.
You know, one of the questions I like to ask near all at the end of and I'm happy to keep you on as long as you want, but I know it's getting late for you too,
Oh
even out there
yeah.
in
Yeah.
California. One of the things I like to ask all my guests is what unites us as Americans. We have, I believe, one of the greatest country in the world, and I always like to find those things that unites us, because I think if we stopped looking at what divides us, stop looking at the narratives, and we try to focus on what unites us, we can build our country back in a positive way, bring more people together on solutions if we focus on what unites us. What do you think unites us as Americans?
What unites us is to come back to the realization that we are one human race. We're all united in that. We weren't created at different times. We have no different innate capabilities. We are one people. Now, that means that we need to have the capacity to embrace one another without looking at skin color and hierarchy and privilege and not, and
Right.
that kind of stuff. So we're one race, man, and we have a wonderful country that has foundations with the Declaration of Independence in the U.S. Constitution that ensures us certain inalienable rights. And we need to stand together, not allow these tyrants like what we have right now completely overwhelm the rights that innately we have as American citizens. So these are things that we all want. We all want to be free. We all want to have all of our freedoms, and with none of our freedoms and liberties limited or subjected to anyone else. And we want to be able to embrace one another without thinking about, oh, you're that race or that ethnicity or this. That's foolishness.
That's right.
Right. So that's what unites us. We have a great foundation, and if we just trust God, trust humanity, to really come together as opposed to continue to reject one another. If we can fight for that, then we can fight for preserving our way of life.
Frederick Douglass believed in that, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution,
Absolutely.
and how it stood for freedom and rights for everybody.
That's right.
I love that. Kevin, any parting words that you want to talk about?
I do want to make sure that Christmas is coming up. You're looking for the perfect Christmas gift. Get that book, baby. This deals with.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, everyblm.com. Everyblm.com.
That's
And there,
interesting. Oh, every Black Lives Matter. I got you. I like that.
Every Black Lives Matter, everyblm.com. From there, then you can contact us if you want us to come out and do some anti-CRT training and anti-social justice training, or do some racial sensitivity training. We do that for corporations and groups. Just contact us there. We'll gladly come in and do that kind of work and help you in whatever way we can.
I love that. So buy the book, Woke Up. I appreciate that. It's been scrolling at the bottom. I'm gonna end the broadcast here in just a second and ask you a few questions offline. But I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight, Kevin. I really do. I think that if more people look into you like I have, that's why I brought you on the show. If more people look into you, they're not only going to want you to show up for a presentation, but they're going to want to get some of your good information, because I think it's people like you, all of us working together, that gives a voice to people who might think the same way, but they don't have the voice to speak out.
That's
and
right.
You're speaking to a lot of people that think the same way, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching our show today, and please share the podcast, share the video. You'll find it on, of course, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and also on all podcast apps. Please follow me at Wallace for America on Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget to go to Amazon and get Kevin McGary's book, Woke Up. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.